Even Steve wants us to divorce.
Mom hasn't been home for so long. What else can we do?
I could hear the voices of my husband, Mike, and my son, Steve, coming from the phone.
She's not my mom anymore. Just an old hag.
Steve,
See, even Steve agrees. Let's just get a divorce. We'll both be happier that way.
all the kindness and effort I had poured into my family were trampled on, and any lingering affection I had for him vanished. I felt my heart grow cold. All right, then I'll go ahead and submit the divorce papers. Mike and I had been together for nearly 20 years, including our dating and married life, but the divorce agreement came together with surprising ease. Still, if this was my release, I welcomed it with open arms. Finally, I can be free. I no longer had to carry this burden. Just thinking about divorcing him made me feel lighter. After that, I submitted the divorce papers, and Mike and Steve ended up losing everything. I'm Jessica, 43 years old. I hold a certain position at a company called Johnson Trading. Because of the nature of my work, I often travel, flying all across the United States. My husband, Mike, and our son, Steve, live in a single-family house. This is a home Mike and I purchased a few years after we landed our first jobs out of college, and we've already paid off the mortgage. Since I can't drag them around for my job, I've been repeatedly taking on assignments that require me to work away from home alone. I'll be away a lot because of my work, so I'm counting on you to take care of the house.
Sure.
Although he seemed uninterested, Mike still agreed with my decision. I often feel bad for not being able to spend more time with my family, but I work hard to support them, and quitting my job is not an option. While I was continuing my work assignments away from home, one day I received a call from Mike's parents, Ashley and Brian.
Jessica, are you and Mike getting a divorce?
What? I was stunned by Ashley's unexpected question. Mike and I have been married for nearly 20 years, and our son Steve is already 18. We've worked hard to keep our family together all this time, so I couldn't understand why she would ask about divorce.
Is there anything that comes to mind?
No, I've never discussed divorce with Mike.
I see. It's just something Mike mentioned. I'm sorry. It must have been a misunderstanding.
Ashley replied apologetically. Still in disbelief, I decided to ask for more details. Did Mike really say something like that?
Yes, he did. But if you're not planning to divorce, then I wonder what he meant.
Apparently, while I was away, Mike had hinted to Ashley and Brian that a divorce might be on the horizon. Thank you for letting me know.
I'm relieved to hear there's nothing going on. If you ever need help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out, okay?
Thank you. I really appreciate everything you do for us. I hung up the phone. I still couldn't figure out why Mike had said such a thing, but I decided to keep Ashley's advice in mind. I met Mike in college, and we started dating and eventually got married. Back when we first met, we got along well and often went out together to have fun. I truly cared for him and cherished the happy times we shared. However, after we entered the working world, Mike began to show his true colors. After starting his first job, Mike frequently got reprimanded for his work attitude, and every night, I had to listen to him complain about it.
Who does my boss think he is? Acting so high and mighty.
Well, you were late this morning, so it's kind of understandable. Tomorrow, I'll make sure to wake you up on time, so let's try our best together. At the time, I wasn't traveling for work yet and was working a typical office job.
Stop nagging me. I feel like the work I'm doing isn't even the right fit for me. I think there's a job out there where I can really shine.
Mike pouted and made excuses, but to me, it just sounded like he was running away from responsibility. Still, I didn't want to push him too hard and decided to respect his feelings. So, are you thinking about switching jobs?
Yeah, that's probably the best option.
And so, Mike quit his first job and started fresh at a new one, full of enthusiasm, only to get reprimanded again for his work ethic. He claimed that this new job wasn't the right fit for him either and continued to switch jobs.
The next one is going to be the right one for me.
All right, I believe in you. Hoping he'd eventually find his calling, I supported Mike through each job change. No matter how many times he changed jobs, I believed it was for his own good and cheered him on. But even after 5 years, Mike still hadn't settled into a stable job. Eventually, he said something completely unexpected.
You know, maybe I'm at my best when I'm at home.
At home?
Yeah, like being a house husband or something. It's about time we start thinking about having kids, right? So, I'll take care of the house.
What about your work? Mike suddenly became furious.
Shut up. I'm going to focus on taking care of this house, so I'm done with jobs hunting.
In other words, it seemed that he was going to be unemployed from now on. He dressed it up with plausible words, claiming it was to take care of the house. I thought it was unreliable, but I still had feelings for Mike, so I reluctantly agreed, thinking it was his choice to make. After that, we had a baby boy, Steve.
All right, I'll take care of Steve, so you just focus on earning money.
Got it. After Steve was born, I took on the work responsibilities, while Mike focused on raising our child. However, as time went on, perhaps because he had distanced himself from society, Mike's attitude became increasingly arrogant.
Hey, the housework isn't done.
Weren't you the one who was supposed to do it? Didn't you say you'd be a house husband?
Don't talk back to me. Seriously, for a woman, you're getting way too full of yourself.
In the end, it seemed like all Mike wanted was to laze around at home. I was disillusioned, but he was still my husband, and Steve was still a child. If Mike had no intention of working, I told myself I had no choice but to support both of them through my work. When Steve was in middle school, my job responsibilities changed, and I started traveling across the country. It was impossible to take Mike and Steve along, so I proposed working away from home. Do you think you can handle all things at home?
Guess I don't have a choice. I'll take care of the house, so go ahead.
He mocked me as if he had a bad image of me working away from home. Still, there was no other option, so I left the household and Steve in his care. While I was away, Steve spent most of his time with Mike, and naturally, his thinking began to mirror Mike's. One day, when Steve was in high school, I called him. "Are you keeping up with your studies?"
Yeah.
"All right, as long as you are." Not wanting to upset him with too many questions, I kept our call short while trying to stay informed about his situation. Since Mike was always at home, I thought everything would be fine and continued working. But eventually, a shocking truth came to light. I hurriedly called Steve. "Steve, what's this about you not going to tutoring classes?" The tutoring center had called me directly to inform me that Steve hadn't been attending for quite some time. Steve, however, replied without any sign of remorse.
Well, Dad said it's fine not to go if I don't want to.
"But what about your test scores? What are you planning for college?"
Stop nagging. Someone who's never home has no right to act all high and mighty.
His words hit me hard, and I was at a loss for how to respond. I felt guilty for not being home, but I worked to support our family. It was likely Mike who had been badmouthing me and turning Steve against me.
You think I'm gonna listen to you like this? Get real, old hack.
Steve. I never thought Steve would end up so much like Mike during my time away. Shocked and on the verge of breaking down, I muttered, "Fine, have it your way."
Finally, you get it. Later.
Even after the call ended, I stood there, frozen, thinking about how Steve had grown into someone so warped. It seems Steve has continued skipping his tutoring sessions and assignments. He's nowhere near being in a position to pass his college entrance. Unable to watch Steve go further astray, I called Mike. "Are you really okay with this? Steve won't be able to get a job."
If Steve doesn't care, what can we do? He'll start studying when he feels like it.
"You can't just leave it up to him like that." I was stunned by Mike's completely hands-off approach, which seemed unfit for a parent. "You said you'd take care of the house, didn't you? But all you do is ignore everything. Can you take responsibility for Steve's future?"
You don't need to get so worked up. As long as he's alive, things will work out. Studying and college applications aren't as big of a deal as you're making them.
That kind of thinking was exactly why Mike ended up the way he is now. For me, the idea of leaving Steve in this situation was terrifying. Time passed, and Steve ultimately failed his college entrance. After deciding to take a gap year, he initially seemed motivated and started attending tutoring sessions again. However, despite paying the high tuition fees, Steve stopped attending after just a week. So I reached out to Mike, unable to ignore the situation any longer. "Hey, do you think I should come home?" Quitting my job assignments wasn't easy, but I felt I had to help if they were struggling. Maybe Mike simply didn't know how to handle parenting, but my good intentions were met with an unexpected response.
Stop meddling. Don't you dare come back.
"What do you mean?"
If someone as nagging as you comes back, we won't be able to live peacefully.
In short, he was calling me a nuisance. "But aren't you struggling?"
Why would you think we're struggling? Things are much more relaxed without you around.
If that's the case, then Steve must be on track to pass college next time, right? When I pressed the increasingly complacent Mike, he responded irritably.
That's exactly what's annoying about you. We're having fun in our own way. Are you jealous of how much fun we're having?
"How could I be? I'm just worried about Steve." There was no way I envied a life spent idly without purpose. But no matter how I tried to explain, Mike never understood my concerns.
Anyway, stop interfering with us. I'm sick of you being like this.
"Mike." Though I still had so many worries, Mike hung up the phone abruptly. Not wanting to seem pushy, I waited a while before trying to reach out again. But after that, neither Mike nor Steve ever answered my calls. Feeling helpless, I gave up trying to talk to them and focused on my work. I hoped that by continuing to support the family, there might be a chance to reconcile someday. It happened about 6 months after Ashley told me about Mike's suspicious behavior. Our relationship took an unexpected turn. It was after I came home from work. In my apartment mailbox, there was an express delivery. The sender was Mike. If he had something to say, he could have just called. Did something urgent come up? I hurried inside with the envelope and quickly opened it. Inside the express delivery was a divorce agreement. Shocked, I couldn't help but call Mike. "Mike, what the hell?
What's up, Jessica?
That express delivery, what is it supposed to mean?" For the first time in a while, Mike answered the phone, and he sounded smug. He might have guessed why I was so upset. If that were the case, It would be an incredibly malicious form of harassment. Why did you suddenly send me divorce papers? And you've already signed them.
What do you mean, why? It's obvious. I want a divorce.
How can you say that? I've worked so hard for you and Steve. I knew our family relationships had grown cold. Still, I never imagined being betrayed in such a way. Mike tried to stifle his laughter as he replied,
You've been away from home for so long that I got over you. You don't help out with anything at home. It's only natural that Steve and I stopped seeing you as part of our family, don't you think?
I asked if I should come home, didn't I? You're the one who told me not to because I was nagging.
There you go, talking back again. Either way, the fact is you've been gone for ages.
What he said was true, but without my assignments, they wouldn't have been able to live. As I searched for a response, Mike threw another accusation at me.
You've been away so much. Are you having an affair or something?
An affair? That's ridiculous. You're the one who ignored my calls, so don't make baseless accusations. I felt like an idiot for working so hard for them. Instead of gratitude, I was being met with suspicion.
Whatever. Even Steve wants us to divorce.
Mom hasn't been home for so long. What else can we do?
It sounded like Mike had put the phone on speaker, and I could hear Steve's voice. Apparently, he was fully on board with our divorce. Steve, completely aligned with Mike, chimed in.
She's not my mom anymore. Just an old hag.
Steve, it's true that repeatedly pointing out issues about studies and college might have been annoying. However, considering his future, it was a path that couldn't be avoided. Why doesn't my concern for Steve's future get through to him?
See, even Steve agrees. Let's just get a divorce. We'll both be happier that way.
Mike said it so casually. All the kindness and effort I had poured into my family were trampled on, and any lingering affection I had for him vanished. I felt my heart grow cold. Are you really sure about this?
Yeah, I said I am.
Divorce approved.
It seemed they couldn't think of anything other than divorce. As frustrating as it was, if that's what they wanted, so be it. I no longer had any lingering attachment to them. All right, then I'll go ahead and submit the divorce papers.
You should have just agreed like that from the start. See ya.
Sure, thanks for everything. Mike and I had been together for nearly 20 years, including our dating and married life, but the divorce agreement came together with surprising ease. Still, if this was my release, I welcomed it with open arms. Finally, I will be free. I no longer had to carry this burden. Just thinking about divorcing him made me feel lighter. Afterward, I submitted the divorce papers and worked with Mike over the phone to handle the property division documents. Fortunately, we each wanted different assets, so we managed to sort everything out without involving a third party. Mike gained custody of Steve. Additionally, I contacted someone. I have something I'd like to discuss. They listened quietly to my explanation. Perhaps they had a sense this might happen all along. Knowing they were on my side gave me relief. While continuing my job assignments, I managed to finalize the divorce and property division in my spare time. About a month after my divorce, I received a call from Mike. Hello?
Hey, Jessica. What the hell is going on?
His voice sounded frantic. What is it now?
The house is gone.
Oh, that's right. The truth was, I had sold the house after the divorce. Since the house had become mine as part of the property division, there was, of course, no issue with my decision. Just now noticing, I sold that house a month ago. You agreed to the ownership arrangements, didn't you? So you have no right to complain now.
Still, I didn't think the house would be gone this quickly. What about my stuff and Steve's things?
Don't worry. I made sure to leave them with Ashley and Brian.
Damn it. But selling the house is just ridiculous.
I could almost hear Mike grinding his teeth on the other end of the line. The thought amused me, and I let out a small scoff.
And what about your paycheck?
My paycheck?
We can't live without your paycheck.
His absurd complaint made me frown. Why would my salary still go into your account after the divorce? Of course, I change where it gets deposited.
You don't care if we can't make ends meet?
We didn't agree on child support for Steve, and there's no reason for me to pay alimony since I wasn't at fault. I'm the one who got kicked out of the house. Why should I be responsible for your life after the divorce? Mike should still have some savings from the property division. However, he had squandered most of it on tutoring fees for sessions Steve never attended, leaving only a negligible amount. It was likely insufficient to support their future, which was why he had turned to me for help.
Ungrateful. I kept the house running for you.
Thanks so much. Staying at home must have been such a tough job.
I raised Steve too.
Thanks to you, Steve has developed such a bad habit of slacking off. It's a shame, really. It'll be hard to re-educate him to survive in the real world, but good luck with that. Thinking about how Steve had turned out, so much like his father, made me sigh. The idea of him being my son gave me a headache. But since I no longer had custody, it wasn't my responsibility anymore.
Unbelievable. You're so irresponsible.
Even now, he was trying to pin the blame on me. Unmoved, I hit him with the truth I had uncovered. Do you want to know why you didn't realize the house had been sold? Let me tell you.
You.
Mike, you've been cheating, haven't you? Mike fell silent, seemingly at a loss for words. It looked like I had hit the nail on the head.
No, that's not.
And yet you had the nerve to accuse me of cheating. Ashley had mentioned 6 months ago that Mike was talking about possibly divorcing me. After piecing things together, we concluded that Mike had been unfaithful. About a month after Ashley asked me about the possibility of divorce, Mike stopped by his parents' house. Apparently, he had a woman waiting for him outside during his visit. Ashley knew I was away on a work assignment. That's why, at the time, she found it suspicious and decided to question Mike while he was at their family home.
Who is that woman?
A friend. Jessica also knows her.
Really? Well, if you say so. I was just worried because you mentioned divorce.
Ashley assumed the woman was a friend of his and someone I also knew. However, Ashley decided to call me just to be sure, and her story surprised me. I don't know any woman like that.
Then who is she?
Sensing something was off, I pressed for more details. As we pieced together what we each knew, it became clear that Mike was having an affair. Ashley, visibly shaken, apologized to me profusely. It seemed that Mike had brought up the idea of divorce in front of Ashley as part of his plan to remarry the other woman. But now that the woman has dumped him, he's trying to return home, only to find it's gone. Isn't that about right? Mike fell silent, as if I had hit a nerve. Looking back, his insistence that I not come back home was likely because of his affair. Then, in a panic, Mike began making excuses.
I was just away for a while because of something I had to take care of.
What kind of something makes you leave home for an entire month?
I went back to my parents' place.
He spouted what sounded like a plausible reason, but it was clear he was grasping at straws. I've already confirmed with Ashley and Brian that you didn't visit them even once in the past month. Called out on his lie, Mike fell silent again. Then, he quickly tried a new excuse.
I was on a trip.
A trip? Don't lie to me. With the limited amount of money you got from the property division and no job, there's no way you could afford a month-long trip. Having his lies thoroughly dismantled, Mike stammered and finally confessed.
A woman.
A woman? As I thought, Mike had been cheating.
Yeah, I was deceived by a woman.
Can you be more specific?
She said she loved me, that she wanted to live with me, so I believed her. But then she ran away, saying she couldn't live with a broke guy like me anymore. And it's all because your paycheck stopped. In the end, she was only after the money.
Oh, I see. That makes sense. I couldn't help but laugh at the situation. It was poetic justice. Did you tell her that paycheck was your own income?
Well,
Objectively speaking, my salary was quite high. Mike had probably been claiming it as his own earnings.
see, I'm the victim here too. Are you enjoying backing me into a corner like this?
Playing the victim now? That's pretty shameless. I was merely holding him accountable for his actions. To be accused of wrongdoing for that was beyond absurd.
Anyway, I can't survive without you.
The fact that he was only now realizing this left me speechless. No matter how much he tried to act superior, Mike was still unemployed and incapable of living without relying on someone else.
Let's call off the divorce. I want us to remarry and live together again.
His audacity irritated me. You sent me divorce papers via express mail, and now you want to take it back. Don't you think that's a little too convenient?
Please, I'm begging you.
Do you have any idea how devastated I was when I opened that envelope? I had genuinely worried that something terrible had happened to him or Steve. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect to find completed divorce papers inside. You're only saying this because your situation has become precarious. Do you really think I'll fall for such transparent lies?
We used to love each other, didn't we?
You don't even love me anymore. How can you say that after having an affair? Even if I agreed to remarry, it was clear that I'd only end up back in the same demeaning situation. Giving in to his request would simply let him waste any goodwill I had left. So, Mike, you suspected me of cheating, didn't you? Are you really okay with remarrying someone you think cheated on you? What about your pride as a man? When I pointed this out, Mike fell silent. You must be really desperate to cling to someone you believe might have cheated on you.
Jessica,
Of course, you were the one who actually cheated. Assuming I was cheating just because you were. That's a pretty simplistic way of thinking, isn't it?
that's not how it was.
Mike continued making excuses, his voice trembling as if he were about to cry. Let me make this clear. I have no interest in remarrying someone who's unemployed. The bluntness of my statement left Mike unable to respond. For years, I had believed he would eventually find a job, patiently supporting him without mocking or criticizing his efforts. But realistically, most women wouldn't even consider an unemployed man as a partner. So that's how it is. I won't be remarrying you. Figure things out on your own.
Wait, Jessica.
I heard his anguished voice, but I ignored it and hung up. After blocking Mike's number, I received a call from Steve instead.
Help us, Mom.
Steve. Steve was probably in a pretty desperate situation as well. With no money or place to stay, he seemed to be wandering aimlessly. Still, I never thought I'd feel so little sympathy for my son asking for help. Why should I help you? According to you, I'm not even your mother, right?
Well, that's.
Steve had refused to acknowledge me as his mother and had even called me an old hag. No parent could remain unaffected by such cruel words from their own child. I admit I'm sorry for not being able to come home. But even you should understand that if I didn't work, you and Mike wouldn't have been able to live, right?
Well, Dad said.
What did Mike say?
He said men just need to stand their ground, and women will naturally follow.
Hearing such an absurd belief, I let out a sigh. So the two of them neither worked nor studied, lounging around the house like kings. And in the end, Mike cheated. Living lavishly off my money must have been quite enjoyable for them. I understand the situation, but I've already divorced Mike.
We can still fix this.
Do you think so? And by the way, you also agreed to the divorce, didn't you? I remembered Steve laughing mockingly at me over the phone when the divorce papers were delivered. Hearing this, Steve hesitated. And you chose to stay with Mike, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but.
Which is why I don't have custody. I no longer have the right to call myself your parent. Don't you have a new mom? If you're in trouble, you should ask her for help. In a pitiful voice, Steve began to explain.
Our new mom ran away. She found out Dad had lied to her.
Lied about what?
He told her he was single.
I couldn't help but laugh. It seemed the woman didn't even realize she was having an affair. Mike had deceived her into a relationship. No wonder she was furious when she found out. Mike claimed he had been tricked by a gold digger, but clearly, he had conveniently twisted the truth when telling me his side of the story.
So we got kicked out of the house we were living in.
It seemed they were now turning to me as their last resort.
I didn't mean to treat you badly, Mom. Dad told me to. I promise I'll do better from now on. So please help us.
Did he really think blaming everything on Mike would earn my sympathy? It's pathetic to hear such excuses from an 18-year-old. I decided to ask Steve something I had been wondering for a while. Before you start saying all this to me, what happened with your college entrance? Are you studying properly? You're still attending tutoring sessions, right?
Well, I mean, I've been going to tutoring.
You're skipping them, aren't you? He fell silent, unable to respond. You've been skipping sessions even though someone else is paying a lot of money for them. And you had the audacity to insult me. It's unbelievable. This mindset was clearly the result of Mike's influence. Still, I felt no sympathy at this point. Before you start blaming me for everything, maybe you should either focus on your studies or start preparing for a job.
Wait, I really will study from now on. I'll start going to tutoring sessions properly.
That excuse sounds just like something Mike would say. Not once have I seen those words lead to anything meaningful. Looking back on my days with Mike, he always made excuses to get by and never took real action. Anyway, I have no intention of helping you. Take care.
Mom,
Ignoring Steve's plea, I hung up and blocked his number as well. A week later, I had an appointment to visit Ashley and Brian. The purpose was to update them on the situation and confirm our mutual desire to maintain a good relationship.
Thank you for coming, Jessica.
They were already in their 70s and lived a peaceful life, tending to their garden. Even as my former in-laws, they had always treated me kindly. I appreciate you making time for me today.
Not at all. After all, Mike caused you so much trouble.
We moved to the living room, planning to discuss our future at a leisurely pace. But the situation took an unexpected turn. Suddenly, Mike and Steve barged into the house together.
Jessica,
Mom,
Why are you two here?
we saw your car in the parking lot, so we came.
Apparently, Mike and Steve had been wandering the streets nearby. Ashley and Brian had already made it clear they wouldn't take them in and had handed back their belongings before shutting them out.
You two just barged in here without permission.
Listen, Mom, Dad. Jessica won't hear me out. She sold our house without asking, accused me of cheating, and even though I begged her for help because we're homeless, she abandoned us. I've never seen anyone so heartless.
Hearing this, Ashley and Brian frowned deeply. Mike was clearly twisting the story to hide his wrongdoing. Of course, Ashley and Brian already knew everything that had happened between Mike and me. You've got some nerve. You're the one who sent me the divorce papers.
Well, that's…
Divorce papers require both parties to sign them. If you hadn't agreed, we couldn't have gotten divorced in the first place. Ashley and Brian looked exasperated. Having initiated the divorce himself, only to come begging for help when things got tough, Mike had clearly lost their respect as well. As Mike fell silent, Steve desperately tried to defend their actions.
But even so, you didn't have to kick us out.
When I said I wanted to come home, you wouldn't let me, remember? You said I was too nagging. So why exactly should I help you now? My sharp response left Steve speechless. You're trying to make me out as the villain while conveniently ignoring how many times you insulted me. And now you're coming to me for help? Don't you think that's a bit too convenient?
We're struggling to survive. We don't even have a place to stay.
Well, that's what happens when you hide the fact that you're married and cheat.
How do you?
Though Steve had already told me, Mike clearly didn't expect me to know. Hearing the truth come out of my mouth seemed to catch him off guard. Mike quickly glanced at Steve, but Steve pretended not to notice. I wanted to make things work with you. You're the ones who betrayed me, aren't you?
But that doesn't mean you had to kick us out.
Do you not care what happens to us?
Unable to bear the idea of living on the streets any longer, Mike and Steve began to shout. Seeing the two of them acting so pitiful, one person raised their voice.
You two are disgraceful.
It was Brian who scolded them. Mike responded in shock.
Dad, but…
All I hear are pathetic excuses. You've done nothing but laze around without working. What have you ever given back to Jessica? It's no wonder she won't help you now.
Overwhelmed by Brian's stern words, the two fell silent.
You're the one who brought up the idea of divorce first. You even hinted at it to us out of the blue. Have you ever thought about how much you made us worry?
After all, they were so concerned that they even reached out to ask me if we were getting a divorce. Lazy as he might have become, Mike was still their son. Ashley seemed to share the same sentiment, nodding in agreement beside Brian. However, Mike refused to acknowledge his faults and continued to shout in protest.
We wanted things to work out too.
You're the one who cheated first. Shame on you as a parent.
If Jessica had just been home, I wouldn't have cheated.
Mike still insisted on blaming everything on me, refusing to take responsibility for his actions. If he was going to push all the blame onto me, there was no reason to hold back anymore. Actually, I'm a director at Johnson Trading.
What?
Mom is a director?
Even with their limited experience, they understood what being a director meant. Their faces grew paler by the second.
You're a director?
Yes, my father is the founder and chairman of Johnson Trading, and I was appointed as one of the directors. That's why I had to take on assignments across the country. Neither of you cared enough about my work to know that, though. Mike had met my father once during our marriage introduction. However, they hadn't discussed anything detailed about work or other matters. I was responsible for overseeing subsidiaries nationwide. That's why I traveled all across the US for my job. Thanks to my substantial executive salary, I was able to support your lazy lifestyle. Hearing this, Mike's attitude shifted dramatically.
Jessica, let's get remarried?
Don't be ridiculous. Aren't you embarrassed to suggest remarriage just because you've realized my position? I firmly spoke to the two of them. Lazy people like you will never be hired at my company. I'll personally contact the human resources departments across all our group companies to make sure none of them ever hire you.
What? If you do that,
Does that mean we won't be able to work for any of Johnson Trading's subsidiaries?
Johnson Trading is a large corporation with numerous subsidiaries. Unexpected places like supermarkets, restaurants, and factories sometimes fall under the umbrella of Johnson Trading. This decision would narrow their already limited job prospects even further. On top of that, I'll inform my friends at other companies about you too. You might as well assume it'll be almost impossible to get a job anywhere in this country.
please, Jessica, we're really struggling for money right now. Does this mean we'll never find a job?
After being cut off by everyone, their last resort was to find any kind of work to cover their living expenses. But now, even that path was being blocked.
What are we supposed to do if we can't survive?
Perhaps they hadn't expected me to retaliate this fiercely, but I was genuinely furious. Do you really think I'm going to hold back now? I've put up with nearly 20 years of your selfishness, and then you had the nerve to barge in while I was having a conversation with Brian and Ashley. As I glared at them, they froze in place. Ashley and Brian, watching silently, seemed to think this was well-deserved punishment. No matter what you say, I have no intention of helping you. Don't ever show your faces to me again.
Jessica,
Mom,
Unable to handle the reality of losing everything, they screamed and caused a scene inside the house for a while. However, a furious Ashley and Brian eventually threw them out. Desperate for money and a place to stay, they reportedly tried to find jobs afterward. They focused on companies offering housing, hoping to secure a place to sleep. However, wherever they went, whether it was a Johnson Trading subsidiary or one of my friends' companies, no matter how much they tried to appeal, they were completely ignored.
why won't they hire us?
we've been pleading with them. Why should it matter if we only have high school diplomas?
Mike's frequent job changes and long periods of unemployment worked against him. As for Steve, his low academic performance as a high school graduate was a significant disadvantage. Even companies outside the Johnson Trading Network saw no potential in them and rejected their applications. Unable to secure jobs, Mike and Steve apparently resorted to taking on debt to survive.
Dad, what are we going to do about these repayments?
Damn it.
Without jobs to pay off their loans, and with both myself and Mike's former affair partner filing for additional compensation, their debt kept piling up. Homeless and unable to find work, they barely managed to scrape by on borrowed money. How long they can sustain such a makeshift lifestyle is uncertain. As for me, I'm thriving as a director at Johnson Trading. I'm still traveling across the country for work, but now I have nothing weighing me down. I even find joy in using my abilities to excel in my career. Of course, I made sure to claim alimony from Mike. Although my divorce went through, I've maintained a good relationship with Ashley and Brian. Thank you for everything.
It's okay. If anything, we should be apologizing for the trouble Mike caused you.
Whenever I'm nearby, I make it a point to visit them, and we help each other whenever there's a need.
Mike really let you down. We want to make amends however we can, So please don't hesitate to lean on us.
Ashley and Brian often apologize for the burden Mike placed on me, but they've done far more than enough to make up for it. These days, I'm living more freely than ever before. After dedicating so many years to hard work, I've decided it's time to start living for myself.